Hello everyone and welcome to a couple of games that were played yesterday in the Champions Chester finals between Magnus Carlsen, the previous winner. And when I say the previous winner, I mean the man won the 4 previous iterations of the Champions Chester. So if he wins this one, it's going to be his 5th title in a row versus Nepomniachtchi, Magnus's old rival. They've played each other throughout their entire lives, and also they've met in the World Chess Championship in classical time format, which is something a few players can say about themselves. So they have quite a bit of history behind them. Usually Magnus is the one that triumphs, but let's see if Nepo has something to say about this one. Okay, it was played yesterday, so I'm pretty sure you guys already know the result. I'm gonna show you the first game. I'm gonna show you the second game of the match. We're gonna skip games 3 and 4 as those were drawn, even though I will mention what happened, and we're really gonna focus on game 5. So I'm just gonna briefly show you the first 2 games, and then I'm gonna actually analyze in depth game 5, and as I thought that one was the nicest. So let's just switch up the interface, as I'm not gonna be analyzing all that much. So this is the first game that was played. We're just gonna run through the opening. It was a pretty standard Queen's Gambit declined, transposing into the semi-Tarash, going for the main line here. Captures Queen d4, and after Bishop g5, Bishop to e7. We're just gonna play a few more moves because it's a pretty standard position. Not a lot of not a lot happening here. Nepo has the isolated D pawn, and Magnus Magnus doesn't have the bishop pair, so it's a bit of a trade-off here. Some players love the isolated pawn, some players hate playing with it, but if you want to be a top player, you have to be able to do both. Knight d4, knight c6, captures on e6, f captures, fixing the pawn structure a little bit, and knight to e4. A little tactic because the knight cannot be captured. Queen e7, knight captures on f6, queen captures, and rook to c1, and Nepo goes rook to c8. So it's a pretty equal position, and the fun really starts in a couple of moves. b4, okay, a couple of more moves were played. Bishop to g4, knight to e5, and bishop back to e2, avoiding the trade of bishop for knight. We have knight back to d7, and Magnus has to look for a different angle if he's to create some winning chances. Goes back, queen to d2, knight e5, and pawn to b5. Okay, captures. We have knight to c4, and this is where the fun really starts in the first game. Here, bishop captures, pawn captures, as now Magnus's queen is hanging on e2, on d2, and Magnus just plays rook captures on c4. He gives up his queen, and I really enjoyed this position because I wasn't following the match live. I was, otherwise engaged, but I was following it on Twitter, and I saw this position on Twitter, or X, and I saw the move instantly because they said that there's only one good move for Nepo here, and I was able to see it instantly. I was very happy about myself. I wasn't sure if it was the move, but I couldn't find anything wrong with it. And Nepo played rook to e8, which is not the best, but okay, I was just chilling, and Nepo was playing against Magnus in a really big tournament, so it's not the same. But queen captures on f2 is the move you have to play here. Point being that if the king captures, then you capture the queen with check, and then when rook captures, then you pick up the rook on c4, and okay, it's 2 rooks versus a queen, but you will also pick up a pawn, an extra pawn, and it doesn't matter even if the queen captures, because then you capture the rook on d1 with check, and only after the king moves you will capture on c4, and again you will have 2 rooks versus a queen, but you will eliminate that very important pawn. But Nepo played rook to a8, and now he just went into a worse endgame against Magnus. Even though Magnus doesn't continue it in the best way possible, he played rook to a4, Nepo captured, Magnus captured, captures, and now we have this endgame where, okay, all of the queenside pawns get eliminated. It's 4 versus 3 on the same side of the board, which is a draw. But already after a few moves, Magnus played this h4 move, and Nepo captured, and now Magnus is completely winning because now, okay, it's 3 versus, okay, pawn was captured, 3 versus 2 on the same side of the board, but yeah, it's 1 pawn island versus 2 pawn islands, and yeah, Magnus has no problem winning this. So king g3, pushing some pawns, not a lot to do here. You guys would even win this against, Magnus easily. Captures, and okay, now there was this one moment where it seemed like you could actually eliminate one of the pawns after h7 was played, but if Nepo does that, then Magnus just gives a little check here, trades rooks, gets his king over up the board, and then promotes the e pawn to a queen. and it's just going to be winning. So a couple of more moves were played. Here comes also a moment where Magnus gives up the rook to promote the pawn to a queen, and a famous position, queen versus rook. You'll just play a couple of moves and either win the rook or checkmate the black king. All depends on how Nepo plays. Nepo decides not to give up the rook, but after a few moves, we get this position where Nepo is getting checkmated in one move, or in two moves if he's being weird about it. So that's what happened in game one, and I thought it was very important to show it because it kind of set the tone of the match. And if this was any other player, I would say that okay, you're now down in a match, you have to resort to, let's say, more risky openings, maybe more risky play. But it's Jan Nepomniachtchi we're talking about. It's hard to imagine him playing more risky, chess than he already is. But okay, this was game 2 of the match. Now Nepo having the white pieces. Let's just see what happened in this one. Nepo went e4, e5, and after this position, Nepo decided not to play the absolute best move. He decided to anger the chess gods. Plays pawn to c3, the so-called Gioco piano. We have knight to f6, d3, d6, and bishop to g5. Okay, it's something that we've seen many times. Pawn to b4, pawn to a4, which is usually the way to play, but here in this position, it's not, as you sort of create, you're playing anti-positional chess against Magnus, and that will not do. a5, b5, and now knight to d8, and now you've created a shield on the queen side, basically, for Magnus's king, and now he's just gonna castle queen side, as you'll see. Knight e2, okay, a couple of more moves here. Magnus gets the knight to f4, and castles queenside, and good luck reaching that king now, because you have to go through your own pawns. That's pretty crazy. Rook e1, Magnus now starts attacking on the king's side, and okay, it was a pretty interesting position. Captures, let's say queen c2, okay, Magnus pushes on the king's side, captures, and now knight f5, captures, even though here d3 was better for Magnus. Okay, you can't really waste all that much time. It's a rapid game. Queen captures on c3, and now knight d7. Look at this, h4. Queen offers, queen to d2, and now f6. With king to h2, and now rook to c5, where Jan played rook to c1, and it seems like he solved all of his problems, but not really. Magnus plays knight to e5, and the f3 pawn is undefended. If you capture on c5, you're going to lose the pawn first, and then he will capture your queen. So he had to defend bishop g2, but now Magnus attacks the f3 pawn again, queen a3, and after a couple of more moves, Jan is in a position that cannot be defended. Couple of more moves were played, nothing. Magnus even gives back the exchange, and now just opens up the h file. That's pretty much it. h3, where if you capture, as you have to capture, Jan did capture, Magnus played just queen g3. You could also play rook to h8, but yeah, queen g3 is even quicker, just queen g3. And the problem is you either capture the bishop, or if the bishop moves, rook to h8 check, followed by checkmate, basically, as the bishop is covering g1. And if you defend with the queen, the rook on e1 is hanging, so there is no way you can play this. So it was, okay, game 1 was Magnus just dominating an equal position, if we can call it that. Game 2, well, you've seen what game 2 was. Game 3, we're not going to show because it's extremely long and it ended in a draw, but it was basically Jan pushing all the way. He was winning in the middle game, he was winning again in the end game. He just couldn't win, and Magnus got a draw, and in game 4, well, okay, maybe Jan was better, definitely was better. I don't know if it was objectively winning, but he could have been pushing for a win if he played the best moves. Game 4 also ended in a draw, and as this one was a sort of a best of 5, this is now the game that I will show, as I thought that this one was the nicest. And we're actually going to properly analyze it, but we're not. I know we've already burned some time. It's a very short game, but a beautiful one, and against the French defense, no less. So let's see this one. This is game 5, and Magnus opens with pawn to d4. Okay, Jan replies with pawn to e6. We have the so-called Horwitz defense, but Magnus says, oh, I'm not playing that. Let's just transpose to the French defense, pawn to e4, pawn to d5, knight to c3, and knight to f6. Maybe this is sort of a Jan's psychological warfare, where he doesn't, where he really wants to play the French, because we all know how good Jan is in the French. And then when you play d4, Jan just plays e6, and you're like, oh, what is this? And then you play e4, and then Jan actually gets what he wants. Pawn to e5, Magnus goes for the advanced variation, or the so-called Steinitz variation. knight fd7, and now f4 is pretty much an automatic in every game, knight f3 sometimes, but here we have knight to e2, saying that you want to play c3 and just have a really solid pawn structure. So knight goes, young goes c5, pawn to c3, knight to c6, we have a3 and pawn to a5, knight to f3, and now there is a game where bishop d7 was played, but Jan plays pawn to a4, and it is now as of move 8 that we have a completely new game, which is really awesome, as like I've said, it's a very short game. Magnus strikes with h4, and okay, obviously we have a sort of a static center. You can trade once, but the center doesn't seem to be going anywhere, and Magnus says, all right, I'm just gonna push on the king side. We have queen to a5 by Jan, putting more pressure on the center as the c3 pawn is now pinned, so c captures on d3. d4 will be an idea. Bishop to d2, now stopping that, and queen back to b6 as a new target has been revealed. Rook to b1 by Magnus, and bishop to e7. We have bishop to e3, and now castles kingside by Jan. Okay, we have knight to f4. Doesn't seem like Magnus is castling kingside. It seems that he just wanted Jan to castle kingside to go for a kingside attack, and now you see some problems with your position. We have queen to b3. Jan says, all right, I don't want to get attacked here. Let's just trade queens. Magnus says, nope, not happening. Queen to c1. C captures on d4. We have c captures on d4, and now knight to a5. Maybe knight c4 is an idea, maybe moving the queen and then knight coming to b3. Bishop to d3 by Magnus, and now pawn to h6 by Jan. And this is sort of what I like to call seeing ghosts, or defending against ghosts. It's when you defend against threats that aren't real, they sort of become real. Because here you should continue with something like rook to d8. Even though your position is not great, you should just continue playing and also create some breathing room for your king, but not by playing pawn to h6. By playing this, you've created a target that was just not there, and Magnus immediately seizes the opportunity. Rook to h3. And Jan goes knight to c4. Even king to h8 doesn't help you here. Knight to c4, of course, he wants to eliminate one of the attackers. You know this knight is coming to h5, then some bishop captures on h6 action. I mean, the position plays itself. Bishop back to c2, we have queen to b5, and now knight to h5. Okay, bishop captures on h6 is obviously the next move, unless Jan plays something spectacular. He eliminates one of the attackers, which is, okay, a very good principle. Queen captures, and now pawn to f5. And even though the pawn to f5 is the top engine move, it is the best possible way to defend. It's just impossible to defend. So feel free to pause the video and try to find the easiest and quickest way to win the game for Magnus, and, well, his 5th title in the Champions Chess Tour, while I give you a couple of seconds. So, for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on solving this puzzle on this fine Sunday. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is rook to g3. Makes perfect sense. Rook captures on g7 is now a threat, and queen captures on h6 is a threat, and there is no way to get rid of both. Rook to f7 was played. Even if you try running away with something like this, it will not work, because after the king moves, you will also capture on h6. And I mean, e6 is hanging, you have to put a knight somewhere on a silly square, then all of a sudden knight f4, you attack the pawn again. If you defended it, then knight g6 attacks the rook and bishop, and that's it. Let's say rook f7, okay, rook captures, king captures, queen h7 check, and you get checkmated. So there is no avoiding this. So rook to f7 was attempted by Jan, queen captures on h6, and now bishop to f8. And Magnus just solves the game on the spot. Plays queen to g6, and he was in this position on move 23 that Jan Nepomniachtchi resigned the game, and with it the final game of the match of the Champions Chess Tour Finals. And it's very easy to make a mistake in a position like this. Like, okay, you know that the g7 pawn is defended, but also you know that captures on h6 is impossible due to the rook on g5. So you might just play knight g5, prepare checkmate, but not realize that the pawn is no longer pinned, and you're just going to lose a queen here. I've seen this happen too many times, even to myself. But after bishop f8, of course, Magnus doesn't do that. He just moves the queen to g6, and now there is no stopping knight g5. The game, okay, we could give a few checks, like maybe something like this, check king g1, And that's it. No more funny stuff. Whatever you play, like rook a6, knight g5, and that's it. There is no defense. So it was a beautiful display of how to handle the French defense. Everyone, if you play against the French a lot, everyone is ready, for example, for this, and then a pawn to f4. But knight c to e2 is very principled. I'm sure there's also a lot for black to do here. I haven't ever studied this, but if you struggle with the regular Frenches, or maybe you're not even an advanced player, but if you are, maybe you can try this and it will do wonders for your own game. But yeah, after queen g6 resigns, and that's pretty much it. Magnus wins the Champions Chess Finals for the 5th time in a row, and I mean, absolutely incredible. It's there's not a lot to say when Magnus wins an event. We'd say a lot more if he actually didn't win an event, because he wins all of them. So yeah, we'll see what happens in the next one. And for those of you who have been asking in the comments, when will Magnus face Gukesh next? In Classical, I don't think it will be before Norway Chess in June, or maybe even July. In 2025, so that's the first time we'll see them clash one game in Classical. And in freestyle chess they will clash a bit sooner. In February, they play in I have it written down somewhere, in Weissenhaus, in Weissenhaus, Germany. So the first freestyle event of I think there are 5, so they will clash pieces there, and we will get our first actual clash of the former and the reigning world champion. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Very nicely done by Magnus, as usual. Very nicely played by Jan as well. But yeah, as soon as he loses that first game, you have to, even though you're Jan, you have to play riskier chess against Magnus, and it's just not going to work. In game 3, he had all of the chances, but either, he just can't play as well as he usually can against Magnus, or maybe Magnus just defends that, fiendishly well. Whatever it is, he was unable to get a single full point. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Sort of for a bit of a longer video, but I thought, yeah, maybe just cover the entire event instead of showing one game, so you have a general idea in case you weren't following the live coverage. I would like to thank Eric Anderson, Xavi Kraus, Blake Terrell, Robert Aratun, and Timothy Rosan for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day. If you have any suggestions, suggest them, as in 2 days the World Rapid and Blitz Championship starts, so we're going to be covering that. See you soon.